Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, Forest Eternal. Joelle had never liked it here, Beth and Amy. I've never enjoyed this place either. I don't really understand them. I think it's beautiful here. We have a nice, cozy home out here in the forest. It's lovely, secluded, quiet, and lost in time. That's what I love the most. From the moment we moved in, it seemed like time had frozen for the longest time. My sisters and I wouldn't believe it, but now we are convinced. You see, we didn't always live here. We came from and very far away. From birth, we had ability, magic ability. We all were raised on different elemental specialties. Joelle is very hot at it, and aggressive, perfect for fire from a young age. Her conjuring skills were incredible, and she was almost unbeatable in combat. Almost, yet Beth saw to it that she knew her place. Beth was a fan of water and ice magic, cool, smart and relaxed. She'd go onto the dueling grounds and take on Joelle, especially after their usual arguments. She won every time, but Joelle was stubborn and often asked for a rematch later that week, and the cycle repeated, as expected. Our people were strong, and our land, a place far away from here, had always had a deep connection with the mystic. My other sister, Amy, was a woman of wind and earth magic. She was far stronger than Joelle or Beth, and often, in her cockiness, looked to me for a challenge. Of course, she lost every time. Not that she was weak in any way, really, but I, being the oldest, far stood over all of them. I was a practitioner in the dark arts. Shadow magic. My late mother was not very happy, of course, but shadow magic is a deep practice, and I eventually gained her and everyone else's respect. I very quickly overtook my younger sisters, and ours to master our elements, and through many duels, wins as well as losses, I was quickly the head of the family after mother passed away. Yet one day, a man of great evil came to our beautiful home. He brought hordes of monsters and demons. His black magic skills were far more advanced than mine and even our strongest mages. His coming was the beginning of a war that raged for what felt like forever. We fought with all our might, yet we fell in the end. Me and my sisters ran, leaving behind a smoldering homeland. I still have nightmares of the leaving. I will never forget his name, Gan, and all the innocents who died, all the noble magi who lost their lives. It was, and still is, the darkest day of our lives. We were still young, and didn't know where we were going, but we had to find a new and safer home. We caught wind of a forest with deep magical roots and all, and far away, so we went. We passed many sights, but in the end the only thing that mattered was us finding our home. Find it we did, deep inside inside a hidden meadow. It was beautiful, old and seemed safe from all harm. I swore to them I would never let any more harm come to them. We were okay here. Nothing else could hurt us. It didn't take long for us to realize something was off. After a few years had passed, I realized I hadn't aged at all. Neither had my sisters. Our hair hadn't grown either, or our heights. What was going on? My sisters looked and searched for some magical glyph in the mansion, something freezing time. But eventually I figured out the truth. We weren't dead. We had died during the war. My sisters couldn't believe me for a long time. They cried and screamed. But we are eternal, and after a few months, they came to accept it. A sullen acknowledgement of a shattered past. So here we are, home. A temple deep in a sacred meadow, in the womb of these lost woods. We will never leave, because we belong here. This is our home, now that evil man may find us someday. But until then, we will live in peace, my sisters, and I are always waiting for a new dawn, when we can go home and be happy once more. The second story, videotape. I just recently had a nightmare. This nightmare gave me memories of a tape. This one tape I remember my mother told me never to touch. One time I actually did, and I really regretted it. I can't begin to detail the weird obscurities that were on the tape. I remember that it was blank for about 5 minutes until a chilling face appeared and said something in an eerily calm voice. Since I was so young, it is pretty hard to remember exactly what it was saying. I can assume it was something scary because I remember running out of the room and away from the television afterward. I continuously had nightmares for days afterwards, depicting the face saying those words over and over again. As I have previously mentioned, I have had that same dream very recently. It wasn't as scary as it was then, but it still brought back bad memories with my memory more developed. I know now the words of this face rewind, based on what I remember. I kept doing this, but the voice only got less light and more aggressive. I did it again. The voice became angered again. The voice became demanding once more. The voice stopped. He just stared for ages, and she wouldn't stop staring. I recall trying to eject the tape, only to have the machine break down. I threw the video player across the room in an attempt to destroy it. After smashing the thing into pieces, I looked back at the television to see something completely impossible for that time. The face now glared out of the television in a stereoxic manner. I was completely terrified. 3D was new around at that time, but you had to wear those two-color glasses for it to work. I was lacking any sort of accessory, just my own eyes, staring into the face of the television. I leapt at the television to hit it, and the screen just imploded into a gaping hole. This would only make things worse. The face was still there, and it was smiling at me. What a smile it was, so mischievous. I ran out of the room and closed the door. I stayed outside the door for a few seconds. I looked back inside. The face was gone, but now I had a peculiar headache. That night, I had those nightmares of the face. It just said the words rewind over and over. To this day, my mind is still tarnished with the horrors of the past. Whatever the case, if your parent ever tells you never to type on tape, nor them where you will be cursed with memories that would keep you up at night until you faint, that's where the face will be waiting in your seat. The third story, the dare. It was a dare for the record books. Anyone who took it was labeled clinically insane by their friends and would have to be carted away to the loony bin. But if anyone was insane that day, it was Thomas Schwartz, known as Tommy to his friends. He not only volunteered to do it, but he was going to do it alone. Standing in the driveway of the Neve Syrian house, he stood confident, his eyes shifted from window to door, seeking out weaknesses. If he was scared, he didn't show it, ignoring the cheers of his accomplices. He advanced towards his opponent, the sounds of a lawnmower hitched to ride with the breeze, engulfing the children as they held position. The driveway found itself losing a war with the grass, and the boundary where they separated became unclear. Tommy didn't notice this. His mind was focused upon his goal, and what lay ahead. Cicadas argued with each other while the birds sang the aria of summer. But all of this was lost on Thomas, as the wood steps underneath his feet moaned with the effort from supporting him. With the doorbell non-functioning, and no welcome mat to accommodate him, Tommy pried open the screen door, who also had some complaining to do. and reached for the brass knob as his thumb began pushing down the lever. Time held its breath in anticipation. His friends had long ceased their cheers, and merely stood where it was safe, letting the sun extract sweat from their pores. Even the birds and the cicadas had paused in their conversation to study him. The door wailed as it allowed him entry, and again when the house had engulfed him. With the door in between his friends and him, the fear crept into his face. The path to being a schoolyard legend certainly isn't the easiest. Nothing had shambled thee into sight clanking chains, though that didn't alleviate Thomas's fears. His goal resided on the second story, and the faster he made it there, the less likely he would end up being killed by horrors unknown. With every fiber of his being resisting him, Thomas advanced through the house. The echo of his footfalls seemed to resonate throughout the entire house as they collided with the carpet which had cushioned the heads of the 3 families that lived there. Upon passing the foyer, white-sheeted figures assaulted his vision, making him leap. However, the furniture did not attack, perhaps not hungry for small children. As his heart safely descended from his throat, Thomas had reinforced his nerves and began walking again. The stairs A small groan issued from Thomas as nightmarish scenarios played out in his mind. The fact that this particular staircase was used as a bowling alley for severed heads didn't exactly appeal to him either. No ghost could compare to the taunts and teases of his fellow colleagues, however, so the staircase was only a minor nuisance with each step. Thomas's muscles tightened further, trying in vain to prevent the inevitable. His eyes forced his head to turn around the corner, his bowels bracing for release. Nothing came to him. Nothing upon nothing erupted from the hallway. The nothing disemboweled him and gouged his eyes out with extraordinary non-existence. Ignoring the ball of snakes squirming in his bowels, Thomas approached the far door on the right, the final destination. Tommy couldn't decide whether or not the doors in the hallway being closed were a blessing or a curse. Shifting horrors may lurk in the folds of the unknown, but since they didn't attack, he didn't bother himself with spooking himself. The goal was to close in sight to chicken out. Thomas stretched his hand out to the knob of the final room, and as he did so, the knob shrank from it. Yet the door yielded to him, and he entered the room. The accursed painting was on the far wall, as if expecting him, beckoning him closer into itself, as it had done to so many others. The painting didn't seem like one that would devour the sanity of so many innocents. In fact, it seemed rather innocent itself. No pentagrams or monsters of any kind. The moon's one winking eye felt playful to Thomas, and the row of neat houses made him yearn for his own. No spotted clawed and bore into his flesh. No clanking chains found their way into his soul. Thomas even forgot what was supposed to frighten him about the house. As he turned to go, he stole one final look back at the painting and smiled. He was ready to rejoin his friends outside. Thomas Schwartz was never found. The children that had urged him to do it waited with all of the patience they could muster as the light deepened to orange over the horizon. Eventually, each found their own paths to their houses and mothers, while Thomas's began to worry. None of them talked about what had occurred, not between themselves, and not to the police when they interrogated them. When the house was demolished a year later, there was no painting depicting a winking moon amongst the rubble.